session. All of us have been kept on mute and cameras have been put off by default. This is to minimize distractions of any kind. In case you have any queries, please add them to the chat box. Our team will pick it up and resolve them soon. We are trying to maintain the highest quality of connectivity. However, if we face any technical glitch, we will keep you informed. If you face any disturbance in the audio or video, kindly check connectivity at your end. Most of the time, logging out and logging back resolve such issues. At the end of the session, we'll share a feedback form for this session. Please take out few minutes to fill the form. When the form is submitted, you will receive the certificate of participation in your email box. If you do not receive the certificate by tomorrow evening, please reach out to your academic excellence manager. Error correction and feedback are key to effective classroom management. They serve as the navigational tools guiding students toward deeper understanding and long-term academic success. Correcting errors immediately and accurately prevents misinformation from taking root. This helps maintain the integrity of the subject matter and ensures students have a solid foundation of knowledge. But it's more important to fix up these mistakes. Thoughtful feedback transform error into teachable moments. When students see feedback as a constructive process, it cultivates a growth mindset. They become more open to take academic risk and less afraid of making mistakes, leading to increased engagement and motivation. In a well managed classroom, consistent and clear feedback helps establish a culture of trust and respect. Students know their efforts are valued and their potential are recognized. This positive environment not only enhances learning but also supports social and emotional development, fostering resilience and self confidence. Today, to facilitate this session, we have with us Dr. Anupma Harshal. Dr. Anupma is an independent woman in STEM with over 22 years of experience as an academician, research administration, of which last 7 years have been in science outreach, advocacy, communication, and public engagement. She has been a capacity building trainer, an avid Foldscoper, a high achieving teacher, mentor who has steered undergraduate research with 28 projects to her credit. Recipient of Indo-US Foldscope Grant, Superheroes Against Superbug Fellowship, K. Murlidhar STEM Peers Travel Grant. She has been a part of several government projects that include Human Manav Atlas Initiative, Vigyan at Pune Knowledge Cluster, and is an engaged Foldscope mentor at Ashoka University. Let's welcome to Dr. Anupma, and now I hand it over to her. Ma'am, you are on mute. Please unmute.
Thank you so much, Ratika, for the kind introduction and leading us to this wonderful evening. With your kind permission, I'll begin my slide share.
Yes. It's visible, ma'am.
Yeah. So, namaste, everybody. It's lovely to interact with all of you. And I'm sure after that introduction, you're going to be wondering, as an undergraduate teacher with about 23 years that I have traveled, what is it that I'm going to teach you? So let's, kind of understand that we're together here in this evening for me to share my experiences and draw from my learnings. Whatever I have learned in this journey, where I have not only trained teachers in STEM, but I have trained teachers in STEP for STEM, which is grade 5, 6, 7, 8, and also before that by establishing STEM laboratories pan India. So I extend a warm welcome to all of you for this wonderful evening. And believe me, I'm not the teacher here. We are going to be doing some experience sharing and learning together out of it. So I hope you are ready for this journey that we are just going to begin with. So let us begin on a note, which is very dear to us. Let's try and walk down memory lane. You know, how is it? How did you feel when you were first corrected when you were a student? Who corrected your mistakes? How did you feel when you were corrected in front of the entire class? Uh, you know, how was your teacher correct? Are you able to see my slides? Are you
Uh, Anupma ma'am, it's not shared, I guess.
right?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, okay, fine. So, how did you feel when you were corrected in front of your classmates? Did you find your teacher or your peers helpful to correct your mistakes? So I'm continuously looking at the chat window because that's typically where I am, trying to understand that what was your feeling when you were corrected? Have you been corrected in class? I can see your answers. And how did you feel? What was your feeling when you were corrected in class? Yes, I can see many of you were corrected by your teachers. What was your feeling as a student? What was the feeling that that you felt when your teacher corrected you? Thank you. Somebody said shy, humiliated, embarrassed, not so good. Thank you, Indira. Thank you so many few for those answers. Deepa, thank you. You felt bad. Richa says you were nervous. Yes, some of us were shy, a little embarrassed. Yes, we were corrected by our teachers and parents. It was embarrassing, anxious, felt very sad, felt very guilty, felt happy. Thank you. That's the first positive answer I've got. But nevertheless, the feelings are very genuine. A little bit of fear, little bit of shyness, scared. Okay. You know, uh, going through this, going through the words, going through the adjectives that you're sharing, it thank you. There are some of you are saying they were supportive, somebody felt confused, somebody got nervous, somebody felt very bad. They were corrected, embarrassed, but very happy. Thank you. A little bit of fear, we felt good. Okay, I'm really liking this mix of answers because this will really help me take the end. There was some hesitation. Yes, indeed. Indeed, guilty. Yes. So, typically, what we're going to do here is we're going to be understanding and, trying to note that what exactly is your student feeling when you are doing this error correction or giving feedback, right? This is what you felt. This is what you felt. You felt shy, you felt slightly unhappy, you felt slightly uncomfortable, or you felt happy, you felt a little positive when your teacher corrected you. But this is what I want you to vibe with, that I want you to understand that when you are correcting your child, when you are making that error correction, or making that note that I should be making this mistake again, this is what your child is facing in your class, right? This is what your child is facing in class. So that one word that comes to your mind when you go back to memory lane, I can pick up a few words from here: making that mistake, being guilty, feeling sad, feeling happy, or feeling very positive. Now that's a Mentimeter poll, but for those of you who are attending with your device, it's perfectly okay. I just thought it would be good for us to, but I'm very happy all of you have given me a lot of answers in your chat, and that really helps me to draw from it. I typically made you do this exercise to kind of, do something what we say, what's alive. What are you feeling at this moment? By making you go back to that act in your class, and then getting you to express yourself that this is what I'm feeling right now. Thank you, Shakira. Shakira says, don't repeat it again. This is what, you have probably undergone, and that's precisely what your child is feeling in class. So whatever you have shared with me as answers, it's something that your children are going through. Correction must be done so that he or she must not feel awkward. Indeed, thank you for that input. I felt good, at least the teacher is there to show me the path. Well, that's again a good way of taking it ahead. So essentially, if you see, as teachers, we are told that error correction is necessary. However, the value of error correction has long been discussed. So, a lot of people think that it should be corrected immediately, it should be remediated quickly, it should be done in a particular manner. While a lot of others feel, which is, the last part that I've written, that in our post method, eclectic throw everything at them. Yes, and then something is bound to stick. We need to be aware of the options available, that we can decide what is better for us and not, and for our students. Thank you, Sudha, for that input, which is learning through our mistakes. So this workshop today will explore the importance of errors, feedback in the classroom, and provide practical strategies for effective error correction. I'm going to be going a little slow. I'll try and use a lot of examples, and we've already discussed that you can put in your questions there, which we will be taking after collation at towards the end of it. Okay, so what's the agenda? Well, we're going to be talking about what is an error, a mistake, and a slip. What are the types of errors? What is error correction? Well, then how do you remove? How do you remediate? How do you, get away with this kind of a error mechanism? Well, you give feedback. What are the different types of feedback that we give? And what are the best practices that you can maintain? Now, before I go ahead, I hope you're going to keep a mark of my slides here and tell me towards the end if there's any particular slide that you liked and why. Okay? Yes. I hope you can see that last sentence which is written there: error correction and feedback. I know there are some errors in it. I hope you are making your observations. Thank you, Soja. Soja shares with us that they felt sad when they were corrected. This is why I took you into the space of what the student is facing. So while for you an error correction is a rational or a professional method of ensuring that the child has got the message, you know what the student is feeling? The student is thinking from an emotional side. The student feels that if his error is corrected in front of everybody, it is humiliating, it is insulting. Not everybody is capable of taking a correction or an error remediation or feedback in front of the entire class. So that's our agenda for today, and that's how we are going to be, proceeding ahead with it. So, what according to you is an error? Anybody? What is an error? Any one of you? What is an error? So, an error is obviously, something that is happening because the child is not having enough knowledge of that particular content. I'll give you a very simple. Oh, thank you. Mistakes, unknown mistake. So, do we think mistake and error is same? To correct, to recorrect. Okay, thank you so much for streaming those answers. So, before we go ahead, do you think it would be good, mistakes done by our students unknowingly? Would it be good for us to know exactly what is the terminology that I'm going to be using today? Okay, mistakes are accidental. They are more informal and casual than error, whereas errors are made due to lack of knowledge. They are more technical and informal than a mistake. So, a slight difference between a mistake and an error. Mistake is accidental. So, there is a chance that you are quite aware of what you are doing and still you end up making. Yes, it is more casual than an error. But I will be also using these other words. Do you use them in your class? You made a blunder here, you went wrong here, this is your fault, this is a fault in which you have presented your answer, this is a fault in which you've written your answer. So what is a fault? A fault is a mistake for which you are to blame, or there's a weakness. A blunder is something very silly. I don't even want to use the word stupid or careless. Okay. And what is wrong? Wrong is incorrect or untrue. Often we use these words one for the other, don't we? We use these words one for the other. But I would request you, as teachers, as mentors, as facilitators, essentially as orchestrate, the person who's leading the orchestra in your class, the person who's leading the troupe is going to be you. So it would be good for us to understand not to use these words one for the other. You are wrong. for correcting an error is actually going to take the child in a space which is going to be very difficult for you or the parent to get the child out from. Okay, this is precisely why I spent a slide here, and each of my slides I have shared the source of the slide so that you have enough room to understand where these resources have been drawn from. And I would just be very happy if you can definitely connect and revert back saying, which slide you like, and if you need any references for helping me to get your lesson, take it ahead. Okay, with this background in mind, I wanted to understand that mistakes that are happening in class, mistakes that are happening uh, while writing, mistakes that are happening while presenting are very small, simple errors. The child is not wrong over there, right? So the next time you use these words, I would request you to be very mindful of how you're using this word and in what context. Okay, going ahead from here, what are the different types of errors? Well, as you can see, I've tried and put together a slip, an error, and an attempt. Typically, why I have done this is for you to understand that while we're talking of mistakes and error in a very informal manner, this is a 1993 reference by Julian Edge, which divides mistakes into three broad categories, namely slips, errors, and attempts. Slips is when students can correct themselves. Errors are when students cannot correct themselves. Attempts is an ambitious language use by using structures they have not yet learned. In a more classical definition, I've put them up as what is an error? Errors happen when a learner doesn't have sufficient knowledge of the language. This could occur when they have never been exposed to the language. Attempts, if they still make an error because they have no prior knowledge, that means the child is at least making an attempt to speak, to conduct, or to say something in the language that you're talking to him. Slips are the opposite end of the error spectrum. They happen when a learner knows the language, but due to the speed of the conversation or other factors, like you could get nervous, you could get anxious, the teacher has asked you to just suddenly get up and read a particular book or a paragraph or about yourself, or they're writing something which is incorrect. These are often self corrected or ignored. So if I've made a mistake, I would say, excuse me, but this is how I wanted to say it again. This is an opportunity for me to tell you about fossilized errors. Errors that could come from the language having been acquired incorrectly. And as far as they are concerned, that means when I'm speaking about it, when I'm talking, when I'm using that particular word, at that point, as far as I'm concerned, I see this as being correct. Okay? So essentially, I want you to see errors, appreciate attempts, slips to be looked at in a very different manner, and fossilized errors is the domain or the zone that we are going to be working upon. Okay, this is going to be an area which we are going to be working upon. This is going to be an area which we need to correct. So how do you correct fossilized errors? But before that, let me ask you a question. So you're standing in a shop, and you're purchasing a bottle like this, and you're kind of just looking through the different bottles that are there in the classroom, and suddenly somebody else just comes inside the shop and asks you, what is the price of the bottle? What do you do? So you're in a shop, yourself, you have gone to pick up something, and another person just walks in and asks you the price of that bottle, or asks you to show more bottles of that type. What is it that you're going to do? How do you respond? How do you respond? Any one of you who has had this experience would like to just think? Please let me tell you, there are no negative marks for a wrong answer, and all wrong answers are welcome in this class. So if somebody mistakes you, mistakenly kind of thinks that you are the salesperson, you quickly just say, sorry, but I'm not the salesperson here. The person who's doing the sales is sitting there, right? Right? We don't give them an explanation that, excuse me, I'm a scientist or I'm an English teacher and you cannot talk to me like this. We don't do that, right? This is typically how I want you to approach errors in your class. It happened, somebody mistook you for something, somebody, just requested you that, or, kind of took you on the wrong. You just say sorry and you just kind of go ahead with it. Okay? Essentially, this is where we are. So, if you look at it closely, you will find that an attempt is an error when using not yet acquired language. That means you're making an attempt to talk that language. You're making an attempt to build your vocabulary. You're making an attempt to learn that language. And obviously, an error, therefore, is a result of inadequate mastery of that language. What then is a fossilized error? I just said an error where language has been acquired inaccurately. That means not yet. It's in a mindset where the acquiring has not happened fully. You're still developing it or you're still acquiring it. A mistake is a result of confusion of an already acquired language, while a slip, I'm just reiterating, is a result of accidental misuse of an already acquired language. If there are any doubts that you have till this, please do use the chat window to connect back. Okay? I hope by now we are pretty settled about what's an error, what's a slip, a mistake, an attempt, and a slight distinction between an error and a mistake. So, do you think or do you agree that we learn from our mistakes? Anybody here who thinks that no, we never made a mistake, but that is how the learning happened. We just kind of understood. We just kind of knew that yes, this was going to happen. Any one of you here who thinks that we learn from our mistakes? Indeed, if you look at this picture here, if you look at this graphic here, you'll realize that what you learned from theory, what you learned from practice, vis-a-vis what you learned from your mistakes. Do you agree then that we learn from our mistakes? I'm sure none of you are going to disagree to this, because in most of our journey of life, there is a theory, there are a lot of practicals that we do, but when we make a mistake, we put it as a lesson there that, hey, this is something that I need not do like this. This is how I need to remediate this. This is how I need to correct. And then we move ahead from there. Okay. So I hope you will remember this, that this is exactly what children in your class are facing. And the challenge in your class is even more. For example, your class has a diverse it's a diverse learning cohort. So there are visual learners, there are kinesthetic learners, there are audio learners, and there are just about different types of learners. So the more they fumble, the more they kind of attempt, slip, and then you remediate it. It's going to take you into a zone where children are going to start learning from their mistakes. I would like to repeat here again that what you think as a rational way of correcting errors is an emotional way of perception for children. So most children are emotionally thinking, whereas you are thinking logically, and that is why children don't take error correction in the mechanism or mode that you would probably were to imagine. Okay, if you believe we learn by making mistakes, then it is critical to create a classroom environment where it is okay to make mistakes. Do you understand that? If you believe that we learn by making mistakes, then it's very important that you have an atmosphere in the class where it is okay to make mistakes. Why do I say this? Because I want you to observe this slide. Can you observe these two, pictures and tell me if there's any difference between these? If there is any difference between these two, pictures that is there on this slide? Anybody? If there's any difference between these two? Well, if I were to tell you that this is a picture of the world before you made a mistake, vis-a-vis a picture of the world after you make a mistake, I'm being very honest, both the pictures look absolutely same. which means you have to normalize or celebrate mistakes in class. You have to love them, tell children that it's perfectly okay for them to make mistakes, that nothing in this world actually changes before you made a mistake versus after you've made a mistake. That's why, particularly, I have kept this as a picture for you to see that before that, the world before you made a mistake and the world after you made a mistake doesn't look different at all. So you have to make it very normal, very humane, very, okay, very laughable in class to say that it's perfectly okay if you've made a mistake. Let's go ahead and see how we can remediate this. This will also take your children into the space where they'll start normalizing that it's okay to make mistakes. You could definitely laugh it out in class and say, hey, it's good to make mistakes, but try and make not the same mistakes, but try and make newer mistakes. And this will get them into a zone that if somebody's made a mistake, if somebody has gone had a slip, if somebody has, made an error, it will be very okay for them to accept it and therefore go into the space of helping them getting it remediated. So I really hope you will remember this, that the world before a child made a mistake or any one of us made a mistake whiz a whiz after making the mistake. So, why are we normalizing this? Well, because mistakes are a part of the learning process. It's very important that children understand that no matter how many times you correct your students, they will continue to make the same mistake. And why? I have already answered this question of yours. It's important to take a fresh take on mistakes because mistakes are proof that you are trying. To help your students rethink mistakes, help them be specific about that errors. Knowing that answer number 3 is wrong doesn't mean much. You can help students to view their mistakes as helpful. So just tell me in your answer, where did you go make a mistake? Miss, I made a mistake here. Miss, I made a mistake here. Teach them that the red pen isn't the enemy. When students understand how to deal with errors, red means go, right? Many teachers in the class actually use a dashboard which uses the signal lights, okay, which is the green, the orange, and the red. The red means you're in a zone which needs some remediation. When you come to orange, it means you're trying. And when you're in the green zone, it means that you are good to go ahead in the next class or the next topic and so on. One way to encourage that attitude is take the most common mistakes that the class made on a test or quiz and analyze them together. When you analyze them together, when the more open everyone is about the mistakes they've made and how they happened, the less significance any student will pay on a future error. Okay. So when you put it on a collective, then it ensures that, oh, it was not just me who made a mistake, but he also made a mistake, she also made a mistake. And that is how they will all get into a mindset when they grow up as adults, having a growth mindset that it's okay to make mistakes. There's nothing in the world that changes if you made a mistake, and that mistakes are proof that you're trying. So it encourages the child to make more attempts, to make more, try again to say that sentence, try again to write that, those 5 sentences or those 8 sentences or that composition that you had been asking or expecting out of him. Collectively, when you discuss the mistakes, probably you don't even take the names. Collectively, when you discuss the mistake, what happens? Sometimes even child who's made that error will come back to you and say that, hey, this is not the way this should be written, but on a rethought, I think this is the way it should be written. And that is where you realize that this collective process ensures that it normalizes in class that everyone is going wrong somewhere or the other. And if somebody has been very good at the grammar and everything, it's just they've lost some marks only for a presentation or only for their style of writing. Okay. Yes, thank you, Vaishali. Mistakes happen without our knowledge completely. Okay. So could you share some typical mistakes that happen in your class? Could you share some typical mistakes that happen in your class? Anybody? Thank you. Thank you for streaming those answers. Could you share some typical mistakes, whether it's in your English class, whether it's in any particular subject class. Anyone? Careless mistake, letter formation. Thank you. Punctuation, very good. Spelling mistakes are most common. Distraction, yes. Pronunciation. Student mix capital and small letters. Indeed. Spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes. Thank you. Calculation errors. So I'm believing there are subject teachers from all subjects here. Instead of multiplication, they use addition. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Punctuations. Doing something wrong, writing dates, careless mistake, grammatical mistakes, pronunciation, very good. Rounding off to underline the correct place value, mirror letters, yes, symbols in maths when they're adding. Thank you. Thank you for those answers. This really tells me that, in the yes, in the sciences for mapping the points in subjects like history and geography also sometimes they will just write content, though he knew borrowing concept but application was wrong. Okay, thank you. Sometimes tables, grammatical mistakes, symbol mistakes in maths, yes. Thank you. In Hindi, matras, yes, key once it is on the right side, once it is on the left side. In the same answer, key is written many different types. Writing on the bench, okay. Reverse letters, map pointing, place value. Grammatical errors, they don't spell and write, so they do the mistakes, day and date incorrectly. Thank you so much. Carrying over. So I can see a lot of your class mistakes that are coming out here: spelling, formation of letters, sentence formation, formulae. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for those answers. So, taking this ahead, what I did was I thought I will take a few of the English language mistakes, and of course, see, we could do a lot of subject specific mistakes, but right now we'll just focus on a few of the mistakes because it'll help me building the session going ahead. Formation of letters, sentence formation, sometimes writing the answer which is not relevant, lacking of coming out in the answers in a proper way in English. So many a times they think in in their native language and they want to write it in English, and that's precisely where everything goes wrong. Phonics, yes, in terms of what how the phonics looks, how it needs to be pronounced. Double past usage, writing Hindi in a single line paper, writing on the opposite side, indeed. Question mark and full stop, not using spelling and grammatical errors, marking alphabets on the wrong side as PR and 3. Okay, grammatical mistakes. Okay, so essentially what I have done, yes, judging assertion and reason. Essentially what I have done is I have taken a few of these mistakes in English which I would like to elaborate, and through these I would like to derive how we could remediate these errors. So few of them are here where we have errors with nouns. Okay, especially in places where you're using definite, indefinite articles and the noun here. So we have ordered new office equipments. Yes, we have ordered new office equipments. Very colloquial, very common that something like this is said. We have ordered new office equipment. Okay, article error. There was beautiful sunrise this morning. This is something that happens in our class on a regular basis. The child comes to class, the child is lost, you're asking him to strike a conversation. There was beautiful sunrise this morning. There was a beautiful sunrise this morning. The article is missing. Errors with verbs, specifically in the region of tense and form. Yesterday, I go to the cinema. Teacher, I putted the book on the desk. Teacher, I went it home. Okay, so the correct form is yesterday, I went to the cinema. Tense errors. Sharon, wait here for 2 hours. Sharon, wait here for 2 hours. Sharon has waited here for 2 hours. Okay, so the child is trying to tell you that Sharon wait here, but Sharon has waited here for 2 hours. It's past, but that is how the tense error kind of creeps in. Okay, next, subject wise, subject and verb agreement. The instructions is confusing. The instructions. So the correct form is the instructions are confusing. The instructions are confusing. Word choice, the word choice error. 15 ways to lose weight. Can you see? Lose. 15 ways to lose weight. The correct answer is 15 ways to lose weight. Okay? But because both the words are, kind of almost looking like each other, it's a choice that the child has made of choosing lose over lose weight. The sentence structure, where the word order or something is missing or you have extra words. He always is late. This is something very common in class. When you're asking where is person X, teacher, he always is late. The correct way to say it is he is always late. Now, errors are also typical of native English speakers. Typically, what you have shared with me: punctuation, pronunciation, sentence boundaries, spelling, other mechanics. There's no question about trust because everyone is bound by it. There's no question about trust because everybody is bound by it. Okay, can you see? You can never start a sentence with because. Many of us in class actually correct children and say that please don't start a sentence with because. So, this is essentially where you have to, errors that occur in our class while talking, while children are expressing themselves, and what are the activities or techniques that as a teacher, as a mentor, as a facilitator, you are going to use. As a teacher, we don't just want to correct errors. Correcting or treating errors is important, but we want to build the students' language skills or mathematical skills or skills in science in a more effective repertoire so that they have a linguistic structure and vocabulary and grammar so that they can accomplish their purposes in writing as successfully as possible. Now, what are the different ways that can build that kind of skills? Essentially, there are a few that I'm going to discuss: vocabulary, grammar, style, developing independence in writing, self editing strategies, specifically for English learners. Okay, and yes, I will be dealing with a lot of examples, so that will help you, to take it further. Okay, so how students can get out of this fossilized of errors? The something that's continuously happening for a period of time through obviously teacher intervention. And what does the teacher do? The teacher uses a very effective error correction or feedback mechanism. This can help them improve, especially with learners who are beyond early childhood. This would be typically grade 1 to 5. Students will not just automatically improve their English, but in order that students to do that, students need teacher intervention to move to the next proficiency level. If feedback and instruction are carefully and thoroughly delivered by teachers, students will definitely make progress and improve and will be able to produce more accurate language. What do I mean by this? Let's take an example here. Do you think it's a great way to take an example here? Now, many of the examples here that I'm sharing would be typically from the space where I'm going to give you in let's say English, but you could similarly try it for your science lesson or for your maths lesson. Ma'am, even if we are correcting or making them talk in a correct way, still few students are not able to speak fluently. Angel, I am going to discuss these questions. I am expecting somebody to please take a note of these questions. I will be addressing them. Okay. So essentially, you allow them to, you give them a picture or a topic, and you allow them to note down as many words as they remember. Okay, so take a topic that you care about and you can write as many words related to that topic that will, kind of that you can think of that the child can actually come across. Okay, now what you do is you then ask them, you can then ask them to develop simple and easily drawn icons for words on your list. Okay, now, step 4: store those icons using the tool of your choice. Do you want to store it as a flashcard? Do you want to store it as a written note? But essentially, this will tell you that on a sheet of paper, when the child was given a particular topic, those were the words that came to his mind, his or her mind, and those were the ones he made a note of, he or she. And you corrected them there and there, and this is now some kind of a record for you to keep, so that the child can see, oh, for that particular topic, this was where I had made a mistake, and for the next time I need to be a little more mindful to do this. Remember that practice is not for making them perfect. Practice makes progress and not for perfection. A lot of teachers believe that you can actually spend about a particular number of hours, and this will enable your child to get very fluent with the language, get very comfortable speaking that language. While it's wonderful that people are starting to understand how work leads to expertise, remember, the most important part of research is not how much practice someone needs to perform, but what kind of practice. So, what is important is the feedback and the reinforcement for improvement associated with the repetitions that make the difference. Under these conditions, students become addicted to information that helps them improve. So, practice does not make perfect, only perfect practice makes perfect. So, try to set very realistic goals or smart goals, not for them to achieve so many words or to achieve so many hours of reading, but to achieve clarity. Maybe it's the same paragraph where the child is reading, Amachi, Amachi, is this the machine that we were to use? Vis-a-vis, is this the machine that we were to, So whatever is uh, the way that you are remediating, ensure that if it's the same paragraph that the child is reading, that the child is emoting, or that the child is using different tones to express, ensure that the child is correcting or going in a feedback loop. Okay, I'm continuously reading the chat messages here, and that really helps me, to further this engagement. Essentially, what are the error correction techniques that we are going to be using? What is it that I recommend from my experience? While I have worked with undergraduate, STEP for STEM, and school teachers, this there can be more to this coming from your experience, but it cannot be less than this. Is the zone that I'm coming from? Okay, so there are four basic heads, namely highlighting the common errors, using positive language, providing specific examples, and encouraging self correction. What is highlighting common errors? Keep a log of frequent mistakes and address them collectively. Sometimes, what happens? We're addressing each and every mistake in the class, and our lecture time is less, and therefore, we're in a hurry to remediate some, and some of them just go unrecognized. This kind of a method of highlighting common errors and then collectively trying to address them helps the student recognize and avoid common pitfalls. That means for my class third A, these are the common pitfalls which I have on this paper, which means this is a collective of all the mistakes that happens in this class, and this is where the common pitfalls of the students is. This will tell them that this is what I need to avoid to overcome the mistake. Using positive language, frame feedback in a positive manner, focusing on improvement, boosting student confidence and motivation. This is something that I need not tell you, because all your answers have been streaming all this while, that the feedback or correction should be in a positive manner, focusing on improvement, boosting student confidence and motivation. Provide specific examples. Give concrete examples to illustrate corrections. Make feedback clear and actionable. What essentially happens in class is we give feedback, and then we say, okay, we assume that it's done. I will tell you with an example here. Whenever you are doing a feedback or an error correction, ensure that if you've given an essay, like for example, someone whom I know has done a similar thing for my daughter in her class, that after the essay was corrected, after 2 days she had to take her corrected essay back to school to show her teacher, or they had one reading session in class, which means that the errors were rectified, the feedback that was given was clear, was received by the learner, And the actionable was that the same has been corrected, accepted, and put there in the document, and the teacher has taken a session to see that everybody has done this kind of a activity. Encouraging self correction prompt students to identify and correct their own mistakes, foster critical thinking and self reliance. Now, this may not be very, a lot of teachers for grade 1 and grade 3 may say that this is difficult. No, it's quite doable. You can, after your test of a spelling or a dictation, ask your students to just, or, get on a piece of paper, put up all the correct spellings, put it up on the board, have some small flashcards with a small cartoon or a smiley face, and get children, two of them, to swap their papers and correct it, right? And this is essentially where a lot of your correction will kind of merge with positive thinking. Essentially, there was a child in my class who got only two correct answers, and once while I was correcting his dictation, for two of those correct answers I gave him a star, and he came back and told me I've got only 2 out of 10. And I said, no, you have got two correct answers out of 10, and today I want to appreciate you. And gradually what happened? Gradually, this child started aiming for getting three correct answers, and four correct answers, and 5 stars, and 6 stars, and so on. And that's precisely the space the child moved into the zone of self correction. These are not the only ways, but this is something that I thought has worked in my class, and I'm sure many of you, will be also be able to do this. Uh, is my audio, video, and slide deck visible? Roshni ma'am, if you could just give a heads up, or Ratika.
Yeah, ma'am, it's
Thank
visible.
you. I could just see in the chat window, so I thought I'll just give it a shout out. Okay, what are the stages of error correction then? So if I'm telling you that this is how error correction needs to be done, we will definitely move on to error correction. But what are the stages? Correction is usually made up of 4 stages. Now, whether to follow the stages strictly or not will depend on the level of the learner. First, the teacher should show something is not accurate by a gesture and not by, a discouraging word, by a gesture. Will you note that? Yes. Secondly, the teacher should let the learner know where the error is. Many of us just put a wrong on the entire section. Where is the error? Is it the error about the usage of the word order? Is it a punctuation? Is it a capital letter? And so on. So if a learner says, my sister come yesterday, but means my sister came yesterday, then just try telling him to try again may not be of any use, because he may just end up keeping repeating it. So when we are doing the different methods of error correction, we will see how this can be remediated. Thirdly, the learner needs to know what kind of error it is. Is it a phonological error? Is it a grammatical error? Is it a punctuation error? And so on. In the example above, the learner needs to know that the mistake is in the verb come. If he still can't correct the error after the teacher tells him that the word come is incorrect, the teacher can give him, or will need to give him, a further hint or actually supply the correct word. Lastly, to make everything clear, the teacher should repeat the correct version even when the learner is doing self correction, or even when the learner can correct themselves. This helps the learners to consolidate what they have just learned. Okay, so we've seen the stages of error, the types of errors. Now let's get going on why is effective correction so important. Effective correction is important because it promotes learning. It helps the student recognize and understand their mistakes. It helps to build confidence. Positive feedback boosts motivation and also helps improve the student's self esteem. It encourages growth. There are many children who will go back and say, teacher, I will correct this and get it back for you tomorrow. Can you see that? Corrective feedback is essential for improvement, and it encourages growth. It inculcates in the child a habit that anything that has got received feedback should be corrected because it is going to be measured, and anything that is going to be measured is definitely encouraging growth. Okay? It also develops independence where students now know how to self correct and reflect. That's precisely the zone where you want students to self correct and reflect. That, like I said, in the beginning, I did a what's alive, like what are you feeling, how are you feeling. I took you down memory lane. Towards the end of the lecture, I'm going to ask you to reflect. What have you learned? What did you do today? What are the three things you will remember? What are the two things that you think you will take home from here? So, what's alive and reflection is a good practice. It's also something that's not going to be time consuming because all of us, I'm sure, have instructions that every lecture we spend about 5 minutes in value education. And therefore, this is going to be, helping you taking the NEP mission forward. So, what are the types of error correction that we are, going to be discussing or that we are discussing today? First of all, clarification requests. So, student, the best ways to correct language errors with our students who are learning English is a way in doing so in a way that preserves the student's dignity and self confidence. So, the student says, I had took the book. The teacher says, sorry, you what? I don't understand. Now, this technique implicitly forces the students to consciously analyze what they have just said and self correct. I took the book. I had took the book. Wait, is there something wrong that I went? Is there something wrong in the way I said? I had no, I took the book. Okay, so this is something where just clarification by the teacher is actually going to help or enable the student to say that miss 1 minute, I just thought I didn't say it correctly. I took the book. Okay. So, what then is a meta linguistic feedback? Well, the student says, where did he works? And the teacher say, do we say did he works? And the student says, where does he work? And the teacher says, correct. Now the teacher says, why? The teacher draws attention to the linguistic form explicitly. This type of correction also encourages the learner to actively think about their language use. Why did I say works? But this is something very commonly that happens in conversation where a child is trying to speak to his father's friend or to a family friend. And this is the space where they end up saying this sentence. So, as a teacher, when you correct this, which is a very normal conversation when the child is learning to talk, where the child is, just framing sentences, why did you change that? And the child now says, okay, this is what was my thought process, and that is why I changed. Okay. Types of error correction where we use repetition. So student says, I going to the store. And this is very typical of children saying, I going to the party, I going to Diwali shopping, I going to my village. Teacher says, I going to the store, repeating the same thing. And then the student realizes, no, that's not correct. I am going to the store. I am going to the cinema. I am going for Diwali shopping. Okay. So repetition is a form of implicit feedback in which the teacher uses the tone of her voice to elicit the correct response from the student. Another type of error correction where elicitation we've been using. I have been studying since 3 years. The teacher says, I have been studying. And the student says, for 3 years. And then the teacher says, when do we use for and since? Now, this type of correction is either explicit or implicit, similar to a recast, but it forces the students to think about the linguistic form of their statement and usage. That when should I say, I have been studying for 3 years, vis a vis, when should I say, I have been studying since 3 years? Okay. And the student gets going to think in this domain, and therefore, this is also going to be a form of elicitation but self correction. Delayed correction. While students are on tasks, move between them and take notes. Write 7 to 10 incorrect sentences on the board when the activity is finished. Allow students to analyze and correct. This way, none of the students' names who made the mistakes are taken. None of the students feel humiliated who have made the mistake or the error. This technique is good because it is anonymous. And students discuss errors metalinguistically that, hey, what would you have written here? Do you think it's right to write like this? Would I have said it like this? This technique does not disrupt an activity. It works well for a free practice section of a lesson plan. Essentially, I often tell my students that I don't care how many mistakes they make, so long as they are always new ones, and a student's self perception as a learner is vital in his actual success as a learner. Precisely so, the anonymity helps the student move out from a zone of fear or feeling shy or, thinking that he doesn't know something. Instead, it now gives him an opportunity to make an error correction, which is there on the board, and there is a lot of collective thought that comes across here. So, I want you to, take this, uh, about 2 minutes and tell me that what, according to you, yes, between, let's say, when an error correction form is provided or is elicited, which one of the error correction do you use in your classroom? And can you share any example with me? What are some of the benefits and drawbacks you see in each one of the techniques? See, there is no one fit for all, correct? What are the benefits and drawbacks of implicit feedback or of explicit feedback? I have given you exactly which is the implicit one, which are recasts, repetition, clarification requests, and elicitation. Explicit is explicit correction or metalinguistic feedback. Which one do you think, yes, you use in your classroom? Okay, spelling mistakes. Okay, that's nice. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that you're liking the strategy which I'm using. So between explicit and oaths. Many of you are using metalinguistic. Very good. I use elicitation. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for streaming those answers here. It really kind of empowers me that you are also with me. Spelling mistakes and punctuations. Thank you. Elicitating. Repetition of words and sentences. This is something which we very often do. That, clarification mistakes. Indeed, that you kind of help them clarify, you stem them together on the board, you put them there. Spelling mistakes, implicit, perfect, perfect. Okay, mirror image, yes. Clarification, pronunciation, and spelling mistakes. Thank you. You can keep streaming those answers. I am definitely giving a look to them. Okay, can you see this? This is an example which I discussed, which is like, uh, I put it the plates on the table. You mean I put the plates on the table? No, I put them on, you know, I put it them on all by myself. So what essentially is happening here is that the learner is actually getting the word into an actionable. I put it, meaning I put it there. Okay, and this is a form of an explicit correction where you mean you put the plates on the table. And this is essentially what we can do in our class. I kept the duster on the on the table. I kept my books on the shelf. So get them into this mode collectively for the class to say, and you will find that they will suddenly start performing much better, in because of this method of correction. Now, okay, there is also a very important method that we use in our class, which is peer correction during an in-class activity where students complete a letter in pairs. Feel free to contact me if you are a problem, says one student. Yes, student 2 says, I think it's have a problem, because two students are completing a letter in pairs. Yes, they are both remediating, or this is what we call it as peer correction. There's no offense here, there's no feeling shy, there is no insult, and happy go lucky manner, the child will now understand. Feel free to contact me if you have a problem. See, the child has now got it right. Another important method is delayed correction. The cheerleaders threw up high into the air. The teacher writes the sentence down in a notebook and puts it on the board after the activity. The whole group corrects the sentence because the cheerleaders threw what up in the air, right? Or the cheerleaders throw up in high into the air, So essentially, you are giving them some time, making note of where the error was, putting it on the board, so for all of them to correct. Recast. When we won, I was so exciting. Now, what is the phase here that the child is in? The learner is in the phase of that moment that he was excited. Fine. So you recast it saying, oh, you were excited. And the child is going to remember that when we won, I was so excited. And that's precisely where the error correction has occurred, but the child didn't even realize that the error has been remediated. Okay. So essentially, I thought it would be good for me to recommend a few activities here which would, help you use these in your own class. Pair up students for peer correction. This is not just in a language lesson, but we also do it with a lot of maths and science, where it becomes, hey, you put this plus sign instead of a multiplication. So without and next time, please be careful, don't put the plus sign instead of a multiplication, the answer will go haywire. Okay, so that's the space where you will have to get them in just about all your subject. Guide students to provide constructive feedback. So you could work with them, give them about 5 or 10 minutes of what a constructive feedback is, and then get them to uh, you know go into peer correction mode. Encourage collaborative discussion. Okay, so between the two of you, can you tell me what is the outcome? Can you see? Encourage collective discussion. Remember the three things that 21st century education is going to highlight. Although this is not a session about that, but I thought it would be a good point for me to raise. One is learning to learn. Second is read and write. And third is going to be to engage with differences. So the more you're going to think, pair, share, collaborative discussion comes out, and you are addressing a class which is ready for the 21st century skills. Because the child now knows how to engage in a discussion with any one of the peers in his class, and therefore discussion is something that I would definitely recommend even for younger classes from grade 1 to 3. Self assessment. How get students to review their own work. Provide a self-assessment rubric. It's not difficult to generate a rubric. I'm sure all of you would have generated some a rubric for your own class. Put the rubric there on the board and say, if you have written the name correctly, you know one happy face. If you have written the name and the capital letter in its correct place, there are two happy faces, or a smiley, or let's say a star, and so on. Encourage self-reflection and independent thinking. So, what do you say between the two of you? What do you say between this group? What do you think? Uh, you know, is the outcome of an activity like this? Always remember, engaging with differences is something that children have to learn, especially also because of the family backgrounds that they're coming from, where they have a one-child norm, where children are not sharing their spaces with cousins or with siblings and more. That is why it kind of actually helps them to think independently if you encourage this kind of behavior in your class. Next, an activity that I really like is self-editing, right? Using word processing tools. Of course, this is more if you're using the tools in terms of digital tools, but analyzing your word choice. So, which word do you think would have been appropriate here? The sentence structure, style. In your class, get different kids to become the comma, the exclamation mark, the full stop, and get somebody to be an editor, working effectively with peers and other readers. This will help you to increase the awareness or weakness of, or identifying the error patterns and independent study and practice resources. Essentially, this is to just tell you that self editing is an art which will always help you to check for errors. For some, writing may be easier, but speaking may not. So, how to use this word processing, how to read aloud, give the child adequate time, okay, and analyze his word choice, the sentence structure, the style, and give this strategy for self-editing time with the children. Teach them this self-editing, and believe me, it is the hardest part, but it will work wonderfully because they will start self-editing and they will even start self editing your work, which is going to be tough. But this is how you'll be able to master this art, where the child will be able to be taking up the error correction. How do you correct errors in writing? Yes, error correction is often done by the teacher providing corrections for mistakes made by the students. However, it is probably more effective for students to correct their own mistakes. In order to do this, students and teachers should have a common shorthand. These are few that I am suggesting. These are taken from my book, but nevertheless, you could devise your own ones. T is for tense, the tense was not proper. P is for punctuation, sorry about the spelling mistake there. WO is for the word order, this word should have come here, this word should have come here. Prep is for preposition. WW, you put the wrong word here. GR, it's a grammatical error. Y is upside down because the word is missing. SP is for a spelling mistake. Something like this will make a very engaging activity in class, where you will actually get all to take part, put up a paragraph on the board, and you will actually be able to do this error correction, and children will remember that, ma'am, P is for prep, no ma'am, P is for preposition, prep is for preposition, and P is for punctuation. So give them these quick tips. Okay, some children are writing alphabets with numbers like without seeing, ma'am. Is it normal? Okay. Mirja will definitely take up this question a little later, but I'm going to keep a mark of this. Yeah. Okay. So, what are the types of error correction that we indulge in? Like I just mentioned, explicit correction directly corrects the student's error with an explanation. Recasting, reformulating the student's answer or sentence in a correct way without overtly highlighting the mistake. Clarification requests, encouraging students to clarify their answer, prompting self correction. Elicitation, asking guiding questions to draw the correct response from the student. Repetition, repeating the incorrect answer with a questioning tone to prompt reflection. Now, to have all these in class, remember that your class should be designed in a manner where you are actually, identifying the learning objective, scaffolding the information with chunks. You have very clear expectations of what you are going to be doing in class, whether it's a language class or a subject class. Provide opportunities for practice, not for perfection, but for progress, and give feedback. Now, essentially, when I say, we need to do this, what else do you need to do that? You need to change your students' perspective on mistakes, because that's the greatest gift you can give yourself as a teacher. How do you fix your mistakes? Give the onus of fixing the mistake on themselves. So I've shown you two diagrams. One where the child actually thinks the mistake is happening again and again and again. And second, teacher, I can identify it, so I can find a way to fix it. And yes, it works. So I'm moving on to something else. This is how you should help your students to view their mistakes and move in the forward directions. So, what is this entire mechanism of feedback? Feedback is information with which the learner can conform, can add to, with an override tune, or restructure information in memory. Whether that information is a domain knowledge, metacognitive knowledge, beliefs about self and tasks, or cognitive tactics and strategies. Well, this is a Wine and Butler definition, but I'll definitely try to give you a simple one. The role of feedback has to be an informative one. It has to achieve positive effects with error corrective feedback that involves a long term process. All kinds of over interaction teacher student in a classroom provides learning opportunities for all students, not only for the one receiving the feedback. Remember, while you are correcting that only child or that one child who has made a error, the correction is meant for the entire class. Many others could have also gone wrong, but probably they didn't get caught, or they didn't register that error at that moment. But remember, the correction is for the entire class, not just for that child. Language acquisition is an individual process. It is challenging to know when, how, and what to correct in the classroom. Do excuse the two spelling here. What are the challenges that you are facing in class? Well, learner ability is something that is very, very important for you to know. Recognition that there is an error and developmental readiness, that means learner readiness hypothesis. This influences whether learners can incorporate feedback and how they respond to error treatment. Not everybody is going to take error treatments in the right manner that you are expecting them to take. Learners affective reactions. Which are these affective reactions? Anxiety, fear, embarrassment. The red pen effect, that the moment you see a red pen, that means I have gone wrong. So as a teacher, are you devising methods where you are giving the student a safe space in his class, that it's okay to make mistakes, the red pen is not an enemy? Most students want feedback of errors. Remember this going forward. Yes, here are some questions I want you to ask yourself. Are my learners getting used to negative feedback from me when they make errors? Do I talk too much during feedback? Do I do feedback with individuals and groups, or only with the whole class? Am I careful to help the less able learners with strategies for self correction? Do my learners feel anxious about making errors? Do I just tell the class the correct answers, or do I check that they understand? For feedback to be effective, remember it has to be learner centered. Okay? Is there any, are you asking these questions to yourself? Are you asking these questions to yourself in your class after a particular semester, or after a particular uh, session is over, or a topic is over? Sometimes you get very overwhelmed where you teach something, and then you kind of go back and uh, think that, oh, is this the way that I should have done this, or was there a better way of doing it? Okay. Feedback should be prompt, should contain encouragement, and should be specific. Prompt, engagement, and be specific. Have you heard of the statement connect before you correct? Connect before you correct. Remember, always connect to the students at a level where they're responding to you. Remember the three parts that a teacher connects to: the head, heart, and hand. If you're going to straight connect to the head, believe me, the child is not going to perform with the hand. If you can get his heart to say that, yes, I need to follow this, that is the point when the hand will start performing. So remember that always make a connection before you start correction. This is where a lot of teachers that we remember in our class, that we remember as grown-ups, have connected with us. Yes, if I ask any of you to name the person who went second on the moon, you won't have an answer. But if I asked you to name two teachers you remember in your life, will you be able to answer them? I'm sure I can see that from the yes, ma'am here. Yes. Why? Because they connected with us. They understood us. And therefore, when they made an error correction, we were able to comprehend it, we were able to internalize it, and we were able to take that in a very positive manner. Okay. Always remember, whenever you are making an error correction, the child, while you are in teaching mode, give the time for the child to the thinking process to initiate. So there is an input from, so I thought I'll put a scheme here for you to remember. Input from the external environment has come. There is some working memory where thinking is occurring. Yes. And then there is a long term memory, which is a storehouse of factual and procedural knowledge. So give the child some time to think, to correct, to recast, to reword, to change the order, to make the necessary correction. Don't expect magic to happen. Do you remember that when you see your child in fifth standard or eighth standard, and the child comes back to you, and you're actually telling the child that, oh, you are, when the child is in an essay competition or is trying to talk to you, and you suddenly say, oh my god, your vocabulary has improved so much, your science projects are looking so amazing. Do you realize the kind of improvement the child has undergone over a period of time? And there are many students who will come back and tell you, ma'am, you had corrected me in class. Do you remember the way you taught me, the way you got me to think again? Now for everything I think like that. And that is which is going to be, a pat on your back. So always remember that whenever you're doing a correction, there is a thinking process that is occurring. And external input has come, you have to respond to it. So some thinking is occurring. So don't expect the child to immediately correct and remediate and give it back to you. Give them, but remember, tangible, some tangible outcome. Tell them, come back tomorrow and show it to me. Come back tomorrow and write 5 different words or similar sounding words for which spelling mistake you make today. This will help the metacognition to develop for the child. Okay, this will actually help him and encourage him to do some reading, to find out 5 new words. And obviously, when a child does well, it's not to say that the teacher has not done well, but it's typically to say that the teacher has encouraged the child to do well, and therefore it is leading to student autonomy, again something which is going to help the child develop 21st century skills. Yes, what are the different types of feedback that we give? Well, feedback is either oral feedback, written feedback, or immediate versus delayed feedback. But we all definitely give feedback, which is either immediate and direct, it is engaging for students in a dialogue, best for a quick correction and verbal activity. Written feedback is more often detailed, it is a permanent record, it allows for some thoughtful reflection, and it is used for complex assignments and essays. Essays, sorry. Immediate versus delayed. Immediate feedback reinforces learning on the spot, while delayed feedback encourages deeper reflection and self assessment. You remember the thinking time? Next time somebody tells you, even for a task, remember, give yourself also thinking time. It's not just for students, but we are all also students of life. Okay, so remember this slide where the thinking process takes time. While the working memory is quick, the long term memory requires some kind of a processing. Okay, so what is this formative versus summative feedback that I'm referring to? Continuous, ongoing during the learning process, focusing on improvement and progress. Summative feedback given at the end of a learning period, evaluating overall performance and mastery. Okay, so you remember we did some error correction, we did stages of error correction, we did some different methods of error correction. This is typically something that's going to help us in the feedback. Formative feedback, continuous observations, summative at the end of a learning period. So instead of highlighting, errors, you're making a note of them, remediating them either on a one-on-one or in peer or in a group, and ensuring that after you've done this, keep a pre and a post. Okay, and see what difference it has made to your class or to the learning outcomes in the class. Okay, balancing the negative and the positive feedback. So start with the positive feedback. I've used a lot of these graphics for you to feel relaxed because it's a 2 hour workshop session. So start with the positive feedback. Be specific and objective. Keep telling yourself. So a child is trying to tell you a story and is making many mistakes in that. Think about it and tell me, are you going to keep correcting the child in between the story, or are you going to allow him to finish the flow of the story and then come back and say that, do you remember what you said here? Do you remember what you said here? Do you remember what you said here? And then correct it? Yes, it's important, because if you start correcting the child then and there itself, the child will lose the flow and will next henceforth stop making that attempt. Do you remember attempt? He's at least making an attempt to say that. Yes, written feedback is definitely very effective. Thank you so much for that, for those inputs. Going back to where, yeah, so thank you for those inputs. You will allow him to finish. So what is your objective? Your objective is not to remediate how good he's speaking, how good he's able to use the language, the word order, or the punctuation while he's talking. Your effort there is to see, is he able to say 5 sentences on that topic? Is he able to express himself? So be very smart in setting your objective. Be very specific. Offer solutions and support. Like I said, make notes of the missteps that the child took, and then offer support. End with a positive solution or a positive feedback. So essentially, I want to use the word here, misstep. Okay, while I have introduced you to the word mistake, misstep, right? When you're climbing a staircase, when you're you know going somewhere, you miss a step, isn't it? So it's not a mistake. Do you go back and correct yourself and walk again? No, you are more mindful that next time I should not have this jump. Next time I should remember this staircase. Next time I should remember this stone or this jump that I have to take here. Okay. So start understanding that this is how you balance out your feedback. Continuous use of negative language, continuous use of calling out the child or highlighting the mistakes. Try and connect with the child. Try and make a connection before the correction. And believe me, one day you make the same mistake that the child is making, and believe me, next day onwards, the child will not make that same mistake. Okay. So, what is this feedback staircase or the process that we are referring to? Essentially, it's first of all, the child is going to say, "Is this really, a mistake?" But you know that there's a problem. But what's the problem there? Yes, and the child is going to defend it. No, you don't understand. You explain. Yes, but here's why I want you to remediate this. Here's why I want you to carry out this like this, which is now taking the child to the step of, oh, I understand. I didn't put it there. I didn't went there. I'm not studying since 3 years. I understand. I see what you mean. And that is where the transformation or the change. Here's what I'll do from now on, teacher. Here's what I will do from now on, miss. Here's what I will do from now on. Okay. So, can you see there is a definite progression, and definitely this is going to help. You could even get one of these images from Google. It's not so difficult. But this is going to tell the child that he has not yet completely mastered, whatever he's learning. And again, propelling him in the growth mindset. Not yet. I'm still learning to speak English. See, I'm still learning to speak English. So I'm still in that mindset where I still have to learn. I still have to, garner or take my vocabulary. I still have to learn a lot. Okay. So essentially, get them into that zone where they will move to say that, oh, I understand you are correcting me because this word has to be used in this context. And okay, here's how I'm going to change this from tomorrow. Here's how I'm going to make an effort of changing the way I'm talking or the use of words that I'm using. Okay. Typically, I'm so sorry, there's a fumble on my, yeah, sorry. This is the slide that I wanted to, yeah, there are two terms, growth mindset and fixed mindset. But essentially, I can tell you that most humans are in the growth mindset, but for certain things, they have a fixed mindset. But ask me on a personal note, I would say this fixed mindset can also be changed, whatever age that person is in, whatever age. Children definitely fall into the domain of growth mindset. We can definitely talk about this some other time. But nevertheless, here is the feedback, slide that I really wanted to spend some time on. If you look at the effective feedback answers, there are three key questions here we are answering. Sorry, I'm having some water in between because I've been talking to so. So while we actually use the word feedback, it essentially means returning. Returning to what? Returning to feed forward, which means where am I going? Where do I go next? Which means it is in the domain of improving or improvement. If you put, if your feedback helps your child to go feed forward, where to next? It's going to take him up. Yes, feed up, where he's going to ask himself, where am I going from here? You are setting, you are giving guidance, and you are marking him again to improve, to give by giving feedback. And that is how the question of how am I going, where to am I going, and where am I going, where to next, and where am I going from here. These are the typical feedback questions, that you need to go around, which means, is your feedback giving the child room for improvement? Is it helping him set his barrier higher? Is it helping him set a higher benchmark? Which means that with a little more guidance, he's going to go even more higher. Which means again, you're going to give him some marking for some feedback, returning, improving, setting, guidance, and this circle will go on. I do not want to call this a vicious circle, but this is definitely a very productive circle. And most of us don't use the feed up and feed forward, but try using them in your class. That this was a feed forward step that you have taken, coming back from the feedback that I had given you on your essay or on your writing, and so on. Whenever you're doing these kind of assessments, I want you to do these. Yeah, so Gulab, I think we will just take the questions towards the end, another 10 minutes or so. I think somebody is raising their hand. If you can, we'll definitely address. Okay. So if you're going to look at this kind of an assessment or a self-reflection that we are doing, uh, trying to control the things you can control, which is there in your hand, spelling keywords correctly, avoiding some kind of a vague expression because I couldn't, see, or I couldn't think of a word. Uh, Essentially, you will start using formal expressions to in your sentences, in your class, in the way you're putting across your thoughts. I'm sorry if the slides are not clear. I'm really sorry about that. But essentially, this is an assessment feedback which I, would run through after an entire session or my semester is done. That what are the things that that the child is unable to manage. Like, does he not realize where to use capital letters and full stops, where to use the comma, where to use the exclamation mark? Is the spelling not coming out correctly? Is the reading not coming out correctly? Is the pronunciation not clear? Okay, so that's the domain where we will be kind of trying to uh, check out this kind of an assessment feedback. We'll also try and form some kind of a self reflection assessment, that what were my strengths in this semester, what were my strengths in grade 3. I was able to correct my own mistakes. I was able to do a lot of spelling corrections, and in the beginning of the class I had got only two correct answers, 2 stars, but towards the end I started getting 3, 4, 5 correct answers. Okay, what was the room or specific strategy or specific way that helped me improve? Okay, and the teacher could use different mechanisms of either giving the stars, or what would you advise my future self when completing similar tasks. You can ask the student to fill this self reflection assessment, and you can also ask the teacher to give her inputs on this kind of a self assessment reflection, that we could use it in class. This is just an example, but I'm sure you can devise your own sheet, make it very simple, make it very grade appropriate, whether it is for grade 1, for grade 2, or for grade 3, or for grade 4. So if it's for grade 4 or grade 5, then you can tell them what new words did you learn in this, before the terminals, what new ways of making the sentence, what new ways of representing facts were you able to write, for and against. And that is why where your questions for justify, give your assertive question, you'll get them into the zone where the child will be able to answer. Okay, sorry, there is a question here by Suma. We will just start taking the questions around 6:45. So I'm sure somebody is collating the questions here. Okay. Uh, Typically, get ready to learn, see, to read, explore, question, grow, laugh, smile, improve, try, share, write, imagine. Do your very best. Keep remembering or keep telling yourself that what gets measured gets improved. Now this is something that I really am for. When I'm saying measures, I'm not referring to marks. I am looking at some kind of movement from feedback to feed up, from feed up to feed higher. Okay, so anything that is getting measured is moving towards improvement. So this is typically the zone where I want you to see that when you are giving feedback, when you are sharing your responses for a particular, either a session where the child is doing some reading, or the child is correcting mistakes, or the child is pronouncing very differently, You will have to take a little bit of effort to kind of understand what are the things that are really in control of the child vis-a-vis what are beyond his control. So many of you were raising questions that in spite of repeated error correction, the child is still making that mistake. So essentially, what is happening is that the only reading that the child is doing is after coming to school. When the child goes back home, he's probably speaking in his native language, and that's precisely why the child is not thinking in the language or English language that you're teaching or you're trying to remediate. And therefore, day after day, you're coming and remediating him on the same sentence, the same style of reading, or the same style of mistakes that the child is making. So, this kind of an error correction sorry, needs some strategy, and that's precisely why I said that you need to have a collection of all the errors that your children are making in the class, which will kind of actually tell you, how to remediate this kind of errors that are repeatedly occurring in your class. So what would be my uh, you know take home, or my suggestion from this is, whenever we're looking at feedback, whenever we're looking at these kind of error correction methods, you have to have a very open frame of mind. You have to have the kind of assessment that I just shared with you here, where have some kind of an assessment sheet, individually or in a group or for pairs, where you'll be able to understand that what are the conditions that are typically in the control of the child, that the child is trying to speak English in class, the child is trying to do mathematics in class, is trying to do science in class, but after he goes back home, everything is being conducted in his native language. Now you cannot change things at home, because obviously the background for each child learner is very different. But essentially, when you understand that there are certain things that are out of his control, it helps you to remediate this in a much better manner than otherwise. So that is something that I would really help. How could we help a slow learner? Now essentially, okay, I'm kind of just looking at the questions, not really getting into the frame of answering. But since I had mentioned that you have diverse or a very diverse cohort of learners in your class, I would say that one is going to be to able to identify slow learners in your class. If there are slow learners in your class, I have two examples. I don't know if I must give you an acceptance speech of I for myself. I'm a slow learner, and I also have a child who's a slow learner. Essentially, the thumb rule is one is go very slow. Go very slow. So if the child is reading, read each word very slowly. The child is doing some work, very slowly. So as a teacher, as a mentor, you will have to help the child. I'm sure your school has counselors or some help, external mentors who will help the child as well. But you have to be one, able to identify that the child is a slow learner. Second, there are some things that the child will do very well, and there are some things that the child will fail to take off. So don't take that as your failure. Don't take that as parental failure. Don't ever even think of why am I not able to help the child. Try and strengthen those domain areas where the child is really doing very well, and try and you will have to leave certain domain areas where the child is just not going to be able to comprehend. So with different learners, your approach to address the problems is going to be much very varied, I would say. So in a class, if you have help, if you have, like for example, I think grade 4 onwards, they do have a counselor in most schools, or they may have an external mentor counselor who's going to help them to remediate it or to identify. Then the best thing would be to identify the slow learners or the differently abled learners in your class. But it's amazing to how to get them together and get to learn, and that's how they kind of compensate each other for their flaws. How to improve students spoken English, is that what you want to say, Tiravi Daselvi? Essentially, to improve students spoken language would be that in the class you should just get them to speak. You should get them to make their mistakes, make their I would say errors, make them fumble, and allow them to progress, and at all times give them some hand holding. Is anyone else also having a problem not being able to listen to me or hear me? Last few slides.
You are audible, ma'am.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so essentially when you are in the space where you get them to repeat, you are they're making they're kind of building those sentences, they are talking with each other, and that's when you are part of them and you help them make the same mistake, remediate it. Oh, shall we just say it like this, and help to take the conversation further. Because when you take the conversation further, it builds confidence in the child that yes, this is the way going uh, further. This is the way that when I talk I make a mistake, it's corrected, and this is the way I talk now the right thing, and I take this further. Essentially, let me first tell you that we're almost at the fag end of the slide deck. And so, thanks a lot for being such patient listeners. And if possible, do think about the questions that are coming to your mind. But before that, give me at least one or two reflections of what has been your take home for this, or you can give it in the feedback session also. Please suggest a strategy to cope up with errors in grade one for repeated errors, for spelling errors of okay, of for to as o2. Okay, these kind of errors are typically remediated by you'll have to essentially tell the child you're correcting it, and regularly these errors are occurring, which means that the child is not able to comprehend that where they have to use to, and whether when they're spelling out to, okay, the child is also spelling out ot at certain times. So I'm sure you need to get help for the child, because the child is not able to comprehend. Either there is some kind of a mild dyslexia or something where the child is just not able to comprehend that for the child they're both appearing same. So I have a child who spells my name as aun. Okay, aun. My name is anu, but it's aun. And not just once, repeatedly, in spite of correcting, in spite of saying that that's not how it is. And that's when I realized that the child has a slight dyslexic spectrum, and therefore my name anu was always aun for that child. We are giving, even though they're attempting, okay, they spell out right, but when writing they do this, yes. But I think it's okay, you will have to get some help to identify if there is some problem somewhere that can be remediated, or is it really a spelling mistake that the child is making. Okay, so I really hope that there were very many questions in the chat section. If we could just start taking those questions, it would be kind of appropriate. We have enough time to handle or address each one of them. Thank you very
Sure,
much
ma'am.
for your kind attention, all of you. Yeah.
So let us pick a few questions
Sure, sure, Radhika.
and address them. So one question was being posted by Soma ma'am,
Okay.
that when a child knows the answer to write, but because of his less focus or diversion from the mind, they are not able to write the answers. So how to improve this area?
Essentially, there are two things to this. One is this typically happens when children in a lot of school move from grade 1, 4 to 5. Because till grade 4, they're writing words, small sentences, and suddenly in grade 5 or in higher grades, depending on different school setups, also pan India, where they start writing bigger answers of 2 sentences, 3 sentences, and 4 sentences, which is something of a space where the child is not able to comprehend. So essentially, when you're getting this kind of a problem where the child is not able, the child is saying the answer while saying he's saying the answer correctly, but while writing he's making a mistake. So ask him to write the answer, get into an error correction mode or a feedback mechanism, that ask him to self identify the errors in the sentence or the text that he has written, and then remediate it, because that remediation will not just be correction of the sentence, that remediation will be the entire text, because it's his thoughts which he's writing in a language. So it may not just be a word error or a word order or a spelling mistake. It may be the entire thought which may look completely different from what the verbal answer is. So get them to write, sit with them and ask them what they were intending to say, and then you may have to almost rewrite the answer with the child, and that is how the child will now understand that what I was saying was perfect, but what I'm writing is not an expression of what I was thinking. So I really hope that this helps you here.
Okay, we have another question Even after repeated instruction and corrections, I could not see any change in the presentation.
After repeated instruction,
Instruction and corrections, I could not see any changes in the presentation.
that means that even after the child has been corrected on several occasions, the child is still repeating the mistakes, right?
Same
Is that
mistakes, yeah.
okay? So essentially, what is happening is, can you gather those words in which the child is making that mistake? Can you gather those words? Can you gather that particular domain area where the mistakes are occurring? Is it on a particular topic, or is it in a style of writing? Is it kind of related to the article or the preposition that the child is using? Get, if you can identify that, then it will help you remediate, because otherwise it's something that the child has just not understood it conceptually, and therefore repeated errors will keep on cropping up, keep on. So typically these errors are in the zone, I'll tell you, on the table, in the box, in the book, those kind of errors which get repeated because the child has conceptually not understand what is on, in, at, and so on. So if you could conceptually help them out with a lot of uh, like for example, what are the things that go on the table? So a chalk, a duster, a book. So the child knows that a chalk goes on the table, the duster is on the table, the book is on the table. So essentially you're helping them with the construction, and therefore concept clarity comes in, and that is how the child will be able to comprehend the information in a much better manner.
We have one more question which says, children are writing alphabets along with the numbers without seeing. Is it normal?
So what grade child is this, if I may ask? Because if the child is writing numbers with the letters, I think I saw this question in the chat
Yeah,
here, that the child is writing some alphabets with the numbers.
numbers.
Okay. So, okay. Anyway, even if it's not grade specific, my take on this would be that either the child is, processing two things, lower KG. Okay. So the child is processing two things together. Lower grades write it down. Okay, no worries. So they're processing two or three things together. So essentially, see, I don't know if this sounds a little primitive, but we used to have these slates. So sometimes the medium in which you are using, try and get a slate and or a chalkboard or a whiteboard where you would like to, just ask the child to write A, and the child will write A in a big bold letter, and that's how he will try to that will help him dissuade that A doesn't come with the 357 that is there. So that's something that I would definitely, because in one of the schools that we had remediated, we actually gave them a small sand pit, and there we said write A. So the A came only as A, and the 3 5 didn't come out. Okay, so essentially some kind of a motor neuron linkage which the child was not able to comprehend. But after that, when he went back to writing in pencil, the child was doing very well. So maybe some suggestion like this, or just dipping your finger in paint or color, using a crayon, not writing on a small, on a book on a lined page, but some kind of a free flow where let the child remove the number or dissociate the number from the letter.
Ma'am, one more question is,
Yeah.
if we are correcting or making them to talk in a correct way, but still few students are not able to speak fluently, what can
Mhm.
be the reason?
What can be the reason? Well, the reason is, I think, sometimes, Ratika, you will also agree, and I think a lot of teacher audience will agree here, that they don't have enough support at home. So it doesn't, see, when do you speak a language? You speak a language when you have a vocabulary and you're confident that, okay, now I can, go ahead. And then you become more confident after grade 8. You become even more confident after grade 10, after grade 12. Why? Because you have friends who will say, hey, don't say that, this is the way to do it. So essentially, if a child is still making a mistake, I would still say encourage them to talk, but definitely this child needs peer remediation, because don't give him the best of the class, but give him another learner where both will kind of compensate for their flaws and they'll kind of really remediate. But this is something that I think a lot of teachers will agree, that this is something that you want parental support here, because when you don't have that kind of culture at home. I'm not saying everybody should go home and talk in English, but with little or no support, the child doesn't know whether I'm doing things correctly or not. That is the space. Yeah.
We have a very small question which
Yeah.
says, from which standard should we allow the children to write their answers on their own?
Well, I think grade 3 onwards, you should allow them to write it on their own. They will, when they read out the answer, it will look like a big story. But when you actually see, there'll be only three sentences. So most of it is verbal, and the dream process, and very few of it is in actual sentences there. But nevertheless, grade 3 onwards, you should encourage, because it helps. It starts helping them collate information, that how to write, how to put the words, where is the full stop, where is the comma. And I wanted to say this also. So many times you'll say they'll put a comma, put an and then again put a comma. So where to use a comma? So say, oh, the comma, you had too many commas in the class, is it? They were jumping into your sentences again and again. And that's where the child will say that, oh, okay, so comma is something for two three things together, and is when it's the last one you have to add. So get them, I think third grade onwards should be a fair enough thing to encourage. See, essentially, writing is more of a motor neuron skill, where the child is able to hold the pencil and start writing. So if the child is barely writing in grade 1 and grade 2 onwards, they really, most schools kind of normalize it, right? But grade 3, they become thinkers, they become very avid, storytellers. So if you get this into transition, you will get them to, write, draw, put things that they don't remember a word. Man, this is a squirrel. So because they didn't know the spelling of the squirrel. But that's a grade where you could actually encourage them to start writing.
One last question, ma'am, which we'll take up. Students identify the letters, but they can't write their own sentences.
Students identify the letters, but they can't write their own sentences. So there are a lot of word games that you can play. You can put 4 or 5 words together, like for example, I, and put diagrams of I comb my hair, I brush my teeth, I wash my kerchief, I wash my hands. So this is where you will actually help build a child. Oh, that this is how you make a sentence. Is it that I go home, I come to school? So get them to, as if this is a quiz that we are going to play. But essentially, what is happening? The child is reading the word I, come, seeing the comb, and also understanding come and comb. So a lot of things that you are actually helping the child to learn in one go. But these are a kind of activities that you would design, and of course your pedagogy skills will help you to design your lesson or your class, where you've actually taught them the entire myself or hygiene, or the composition that they had to write, which will make it very easy for them. Oh, it's just a combination of words. So I really hope that this will actually help them write in their own sentences. Because
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Anupma, for the enlightening session. Your expert insights have empowered our teachers who will undoubtedly apply the discussed concepts in their teaching learning classes. And with this, we are probably towards the end of the session. Teachers, soon as we end the session, you will be receiving your feedback forms. Request you all to please fill in that feedback form and submit it. And you will be getting your certificates soon after you submit your feedback forms. And in case till tomorrow evening you do not receive your certificate, please reach out to your academic excellence manager. So, thank you once again, Dr. Anupma,
Yeah,
from
thank you very
OUM
much, and
India
all the
and
best moving
from all
forward.
our teachers. It was a great session. We all had a lot of insights today.
Thank you so much, and have a great festive
Yeah.
season ahead. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
All the best.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, teachers. Good evening to all of you once again.